Hello everyone, welcome to another podcast series with StoryMirror. Today we have Mr. Suniil Pathare, the Chairman and Managing Director of VIP Clothing Limited, and a respected business leader known for building strong brands while maintaining people-first approach. His global exposure and leadership journey provides deep insights into managing diverse teams and building sustainable organizations. In his recent book, The HR Climate of the World Embracing Cultural Diversity, he speaks about how culture silently shapes the way people think, work, and collaborate. Welcome, sir. So, let's start with the first question. You spend decades working with people across different countries and cultures. When you look back at all those experiences, what is the one thing about human behavior at work that still fascinates you?
See, what I feel is when I see the different parts of the world, uh, I find a lot of different things. What happens in Asia, what happens in the Middle East, or what happens in a European country is totally different. And the same thing cannot be adopted when you are working in the organization in different parts of the world. So there are a lot of differences which comes into the organization. And there is nothing common. What is right, what is wrong, I don't say that. But how you adapt to the situation while working there, how you adapt to that culture with that organization, it's more important. And I think that's where the adaptability comes into the play.
Okay, so as you mentioned about adaptability, what are three signs you think any young professional should look at? Like okay, this might make me more adaptable to the situation.
Rather than three signs, I would say yes, you need to look at the culture of the organization, because from culture you get a DNA. Every organization has got a DNA to work with, and that is what more important. Now, like punctuality, if it comes to Europe, there is a reason why people are more punctual in Europe, and that's not happening in Asian countries. I would say it has not been considered like coming late to the office will not be considered indisciplined, but getting late to the European office has been considered as as a discipline matter. So there are the differences which needs to be adopted, and I think what is good in most of the part of the world, people should adopt those good parts and try to adopt in most of because now the global is one way of looking at it. You can't be saying I'm working in European culture or I'm working in Asian culture, I'm working in Far East culture. So I think people have to adopt to the best of the cultures from various parts of the world.
Great. After interacting with professionals across the world, what do you think people often misunderstand about workplace culture?
People understand, like when you talk about the culture, they think your dress code is a culture. They misunderstanding with the timings or given to that's the culture of the organization, or whether it is a party organization or whether it is the marketing organization considers a party organizations, and like more serious organizations are the different organization law firms and all. So I think that's a misconception. What you need to understand is there is, like I said, the DNA. You need to understand the DNA, what is first coming into the play, and that's more important. How do you want to move ahead? So I think whenever you're working in whichever part of the world, you need to understand the DNA and you need to fit into the DNA. And according to that, needs to be, people have to deliver. Wherever you're working, results do matter, and there could be a pressure of results being provided. But that has to come from self. It's not like a manager is watching you. That is why someone has to work towards it. Like in India, why do managers have to watch and ask for whether the work has been done? Now, this is not something which is in the European part that we see in European organizations. And what I believe it comes from the childhood habits over there, and from what is like in India, especially or in Asian countries, there is a culture of child being to make him wake up for the school or push him to the school with his tiffin box, or whether he has done his homework or he has not done his homework. So these are the habits in his childhood, which has been actually affecting into the corporate world. Because actually, what is happening, he's been made dependent, and when he goes to the organization, this kind of culture has been getting like he's become dependent. Now, this is not in Europe. If you see it in a European context, like when a child has become at a certain age, he is becoming independent. The mothers and fathers are making independent, and that is why he doesn't need to be watched by his managers. So I think these are the differences which comes into what happens in Europe or what happens in India or Asian countries. I think that's the difference which needs to adopt.
Okay, okay. As you mentioned that our childhood habits affect how we perform in corporate life. So, as someone like new parents, what would you address them? Like, how do you make better leaders?
For I think leaders, it is very important in a corporate life. Like the child needs to be independent. If I come with there's a story in Arab like three envelope stories. We also had this good luck thing in India. Now, especially with the new generation, the saving economy is going out. And what is three envelope story which comes into the Arabic world is one is they divide three into three equal parts of the money which they give as a pocket money, and one is for saving, which needs to be saved, one is for spending, and one is for the future investments. So at a young age, he's been actually trained to how to spend money. He's been trained. Now that's I think that these are the small things which makes a lot of difference. And I think in different parts of the world, you have different cultures to be adopted. And if this has been brought and inculcated to the at a childhood stage, I think that helps the corporate world.
That makes them think independently, which is actually very important in corporate. You've seen workplaces across many countries. Was there a moment where you realized that culture plays a much bigger role in the workplace than the organizations acknowledge?
Definitely, culture would play a different role. But as I said, culture has been misunderstood to a certain level of whether the dress code or certain things. It's a wider thing. But when it comes to the culture, it's a wider thing to be looked at. Your work ethics, your the relationship between the old age people versus the young age people, blending of those things, the deliverables, what is required, the communication ethics, what is required in the organization. So all this is a part of the culture. Like even writing the mails, with the Gen Z coming in and a non-Gen Z people who are working in the same organization, which could be a multinational organization, whether those mails have been understood or not understood. So I think that makes more important and it's more relevant because you have a blend of experienced people and you have a blend of energy people. And on that blend, the companies or the corporate who does it well, I think that's something very important.
That's actually, I would say, very important in today's generation, especially when both have to align themselves and work together.
I think most of the corporates or the organization, whether big, small, or medium size, all are facing these problems. There are challenges which might be happening in all the offices, or not all offices, but even at the like NGOs or everywhere. This kind of things are happening, and I think that's a challenge one needs to catch up.
So, any extract from the book, might someone just think more into a different angle about this problem that we can take from the book?
See, in my books, I had taken a lot of chapters of different countries. Like India is a vast country and has got so many regional dialogues or something. So when we take in India, itself is a big country. There are so many where the language comes in. And in cities like Mumbai or Delhi, where all the community people are working in one offices, even there becomes a problem. Forget the international, the mergers are happening. So when you're not able to, like sometimes South Indian versus a North Indian, when they talk to each other, they are not able to adapt those cultures in same organization. So how difficult it can become when you are actually going cross borders and talking to each other. So and world is becoming one today. It's not remaining like earlier. Like you're not working cross borders, but today a lot of organizations have cross borders working. So in that, when the mergers are happening, or they need to adapt to the cultures and they need to understand each other very well, and that needs to be taken care of very well. Another example which I will give you when we talk about changing the culture of an organization, it's very difficult, and there are examples on I think fingertips where we can say the organization has been able to change the culture. But if you look at Saudi Arabia as a country, by 2030, the way the culture is getting changed in the Saudi Arabia. So that's one example. If one country can change its entire culture, why can't organization change its culture? So I think that's the also take what we can take.
From your global experience, do you think people change when they enter the workplace, or do they actually bring their cultural upbringing into office with them?
It's mix of both, I would say. Yeah, when some people come, they are more energetic. Sometimes they get blend with the culture of the organization, and like they can get adapted with the culture what other peoples are following because of dependency what they have, and they are not having that feeling of challenging certain things or something. So they're subdued some places, and people who are who can talk loudly or something, they have something to showcase. So I think we need both kind of people. If the culture is right, people need to adapt the culture. But sometimes a lot of organization needs to change the culture, and someone has to come forward and make his or his voice correct, saying, okay, this is what is to be done or this is not to be done. And many times those things are not happening. And I think organization also try to blend with the people, and after all, it's all about people management. And when it comes to people management, how people behave in the organization, the culture will start flowing in those angles. So it's important, the right culture has to be, and HR has to play a very important role, like what kind of culture the organization needs to be adopted, and that they need to stay.
As you mentioned HR, from what we have seen that many people when they say that I am pursuing HR or I am doing my bachelor's or master's in HR, they are not people don't really take them seriously. It's HR is mostly a very, I would say, misunderstood concept in India, at least from what we have seen and read about. So what is your take on that?
I think when it comes to HR, most of the organization thinks HR is only for hiring people, or when it require, of course, firing don't happen so much in India. But yeah, when you need to fire someone or just giving a pink slip, that is where the HR has to play a role, or only a salary revisions or increments when it comes to the HR. I think the HR's role is much more wider. There are a lot of scopes for HR for how the performances are getting managed, or how you are motivating people, how the culture is getting developed in the organization. So it's a very big role to play with, and I think the best of the HRs can play best role in motivating people, taking them forward, so that people in the organization they need to do their career planning, how people are moving from 1 year to 5 years in the same organization, whether it's a growth path for them, if not, what is the organization needs, what is an HR budgets, what needs to be made for. So I think there is a plenty of scope. So it's not limited just for hiring people in the organization.
Many organizations talk about strategy and performance, but you often emphasize people and culture. Why do you think culture is such a powerful force inside organizations when strategy and performance really, at the core, they matter because it's business that at the end of the day anyone is running?
See, strategy is very important, no doubt. No organization can work without any strategies. So strategy will remain quite important for any organization. But if they want to make it strategy to make it successful, the culture will depend upon what kind of strategies will work. Best of the talents will fail if if there is no culture of making it running in the speed manner. So if people are taking their own time, if people are lethargic, if that is the culture of the organization, all the strategies, whatever you can make it on the paper or your Excel sheets or your PPT, it will just remain there. So I think culture is also more equally important to work with the strategies. So they go hand in hand. It's like two tires. Both the tires have to work on the same speed.
Okay. Your observations about global workforce eventually led you to write the HR climate of the world. What inspired you to bring all these experiences together?
I have been traveling since when I was, I think, age of 21. So it was the observation and meeting people across the globe. Had a habit of making friends in different parts of the world when I traveled. So I don't remember how many cities I must have traveled across the world. So all the organizations when I was to spend there, and with the observation like why this is happening here in such a manner, and why it is not happening in our country. So I think that made me inspire, and then I should talk to a lot of people. For example, when I should travel to Germany or Turkmenistan. So what I saw in Turkmenistan was not there in Germany. What I saw in Germany was not there in India. One example, like when I say, people used to say like German engineers are so perfect. So one example comes in like what made them so perfect. So then I started talking to certain people, certain education systems into the German schools, and what I learned from there, when they fold a paper, the paper folding has been taught in such a way that all the corners has to be pointed and in a perfect manner. And like in India, that is not. I saw when it comes to India, we are just folding the paper, and that's how we have been taught. So I thought, okay, that's the difference. That is, the perfection is been inbuilt from right from the childhood, and here because it has not been done, so we go to that 19-20 culture, chalta hai attitude, and that comes from the chalta hai attitude. So I think that correlated me. Okay, this is happening in this fashion in this India, or why Africa is not getting developed because of the time zone, because of the easy led to attitude. So I thought, okay, that's the difference which is happening over there. So traveling across the world, like observing. So I thought, why not to pen down something of the experience which I had for last so many years, so that the audience at the large can get benefit out of it. So that made me decide to write this book.
Was there any particular experience from your career that made you realize how deeply culture influences workplace behavior?
In my career, I would say, being the CMD of the company, I started with the export as an export manager as a first job in 1991. Then shifted to the production management, then to quality management, then to sales to the global market. So there has been a department shift, and yes, I was having HR head at one point of time. So all the experience, which I think I won't say particular department, but when you run an organization, I think as an HR, in all the departments you need to function as an HR. It's not just an HR as a department, because even as a sales head or whether it's a production head, HR has to play a role in all the departments, and I think that's the common thing which comes in. So I felt all this experience of the number of years put down to me that the HR can be worth it.
When multinational teams work together, misunderstandings often happen. Do you think these conflicts are more about communication or about cultural expectations?
I would say both. When you say about communication, that is also a culture, because people don't try to understand each other. Sometimes, like the way of saying in a European manner can be considered as a rude in India, because they are straightforward. Now, people might say, or in Japan, they might think it's a rude because they are soft spoken. So, like that makes it difficult for the organization to work with each other. And like when the mergers are happening, like a Japanese company getting merged with a German company, just imagine what kind of cultural differences two companies can come together, and people working in the different parts of the world, they need to talk to each other. So I think it's very important to understand each other's culture, and HR will have to play a very important role here, coming down, bringing down both the cultures together, align them together, and I think that's a bigger, wider role for HR to play in this context, because a lot of mergers are going to happen, and we are seeing those kind of mergers happening in all over the world, and also we are seeing why there are successful mergers and why they are failure.
As you said, in today's generation, so what is your take on use of AI in HR? And what are, a few processes you think could be much more better using AI technology?
I think there is no choice without AI today. All the departments, and especially HR also, has to get into AI. because the generation next, which is Gen Z, what we call it, the generation after that, they are going to be much more learned on AI technology. In fact, I think today at this 5 years age, people have started learning AI, which would not have been true at our age. So if you don't, I always keep on saying this line, like if you don't update yourself, you'll be outdated. And today, the situation has become in such a way like the updation comes in every 2 years or even 6 months. Whatever you must have learned your AI technology in 6 months back may not necessarily be relevant today. So even Chat GPT or this kind of things which have been so fast growing, like you need to keep on updating yourself. So from an HR's point of view, I think a lot of data for studying human beings' performance can also be brought on AI. It's a tool where they can use it the best possible manner, where the performance can be developed well. I won't say it will replace human, but the humans who are actually adapting to the AI technology can perform much more faster, and they can be using the technology very well. I think the HR should play and actually motivate people to get into the AI.
If a CEO asked you today, how do I build a truly people-centric organization, what would be your first piece of advice?
My piece of advice is, human connection is still important. People needs to be connected well, and if you want to get delivered from someone, they should be self-motivated and should not be like asking something and getting certain things should not be done. It should be all from within, and for getting it within, people should be. We have a lot of talented people across the world. It is only when they do it with their passion and what they like. I think that needs to be brought in as a CEO company.
What skills should the next generation of HR leaders develop to succeed in this changing world?
For HR to see, I think there are a lot of scopes as a leader to look into it. One thing is very common, I think, passionate people to grow in the organization. See to it that people are being aligned and the role clarities are much more, because a lot of people I see when the role clarity is not there, though people are talented, but there is no clarity who is going to do what, and sometimes there is somebody and nobody which plays a role. So I think HR should be having a clear-cut guidelines to the organization where the job clarities comes as first and motivating people to get jobs.
One leadership quality that never goes out of style.
One leadership quality that never goes out of style is passion.
One common HR myth you would like to break.
That we cannot change the culture.
A habit every young professional should develop.
Young professional to develop is keep learning. We should always never forget that learning is always a continuous thing.
Be a student. One piece of advice for future leaders.
Future leaders, I think, keep learning and be self-motivated and think like what is right has to be done.
Okay. If organizations truly understood human climate of their people, how different would our workplaces look in the future?
I think it will change a lot if they understand the organization culture. So I think organization will be having progressive organization, and I think most of the organization will go at a very fast pace.
If there is one lesson from your life and this book that you would like the next generation to remember, what would it be?
I think the habits which they need to change, which could be adopted to the good habits which needs to be brought in. It could be simple as closing down the alarm in the morning. Like when people think that I want to wake up at 7 o'clock, it's better not to put the alarm at 6:30 and closing it for 4 times and then getting it at 6:30. So I think these are small things which makes difference in life. I think that needs to change.
Good. So to conclude our session, what is one piece of advice you would like to, give to the viewers?
I would say when I wrote this book, there are a lot of chapters which will definitely help not only to the HR professions but also the management people, top executives. There are a lot of experiences which I have given on companies like what I've seen across the globe. So even if people do adopt. So I think that would be the great help to the society, and I'll be the happiest person if someone comes and tells me, okay, I read this book and they had changed and it had really helped them. Because even today, when I speak to some people or ex colleagues of our organization, and when they come and they explain me, okay, you had said this, I may have forgotten that, but when they come, that gives us more satisfaction in life. So I think if anybody adopts this and share with me, like, okay, this helped them, that would be, I would say, the book has been
Yes.
successful.